The Charlotte Bobcats, a team that only lasted 10 years in the NBA. Those 10 years were filled with disappointment on a year-to-year basis, with very little things to look forward to in the future. From 2004 to 2014, in total, they achieved a record of 293 to 511, a win percentage of 36%. They went through 6 coaches and only made the playoffs a total of 2 times, getting swept in both of those series. How did it come to that? Well, that is the subject of today's video, with your boy, Alvini motherfucking Linguine. Now, just a little bit of background on myself real quick. I used to love the Bobcats because one of my favorite colors is orange, unfortunately, and because of Gerald Wallace. I know they were never good, but sometimes you can enjoy something that isn't good, just like Knicks fans. But let me stop with the jokes. Today, I wanted to take a dive into looking at one of my favorite teams and see why things just never worked out for them. Plus, just as a little self-plug on my second channel, I am starting a realistic expansion My League series and bringing back the Bobcats to the NBA. So if you're interested in that, then check the link in the pinned comment and in the description. But other than that, the like goal is the usual 1,000 likes, and I hope you learned something new today. But let's get started, shall we? You already know who it is. Roll it!
He incurred an injury dealing with weights in the weight room, so he stitched up in the left hand doing all this.
It's over, ladies and gentlemen.
On June 22nd, 2004, the NBA introduced the 30th team to be in the league, being the Charlotte Bobcats. With that, an expansion draft was done where all the other NBA teams get to protect 8 players while letting the rest be chosen by the expansion team. Now you're going to ask me, who did they pick? The quick and easy answer is a bunch of bums that didn't really last in the league. Even out of the 19 players selected by the Bobcats, only 7 was on that team that season. Anyways, after the expansion draft, they traded for the second pick from the Clippers. I don't know why my favorite team always ends up in these videos, which they used to draft Emeka Okafor, a 6'10" big man from UConn who was coming off a national championship, and considering who was left in the draft, it was definitely the best option. Oh yeah, they also drafted this nigga, but who cares? They got Emeka Okafor. With that settled, they started the 2004 season with rookie Emeka and a bunch of bums and proceeded to be bad with an 18-64 record for the first season of the Charlotte Bobcats dynasty. Well, if you even want to call it a dynasty. But some positives were found during that time. Emeka Okafor won Rookie of the Year while averaging 15 points and 11 rebounds a game, and one of the people they drafted from the expansion draft named Gerald Wallace from the Kings was starting to show what he can do as a scorer and as a elite defender because he averaged 11 points, 5 rebounds, a steal, and a block a game as a small forward. With this, the franchise knew what they had to do: develop Gerald Wallace further and Emeka and make them a dynamic duo. Other notable players on this team during the time was an old-ass Steve Smith and the three-point god himself, Jason Capono. And nobody else, it was just them 4 really. With the plan of developing Okafor and Wallace being set, the Bobcats still had a top 5 pick in the draft to use. Now originally I was going to rip the Bobcats management for taking big fucking ass, and not the good kind, Raymond Felton with the 5th pick in the draft. But considering how the rest of the draft turned out, there wasn't too many options to choose from that spot. This was more evident when the Bobcats also picked some nigga named Sean May at 13th that didn't even last 5 seasons in the league. It even makes that worse because Danny Granger and Gerald Green was picked a few spots down from that. But anyways, they did improve by 12 wins and they were the 3rd fastest paced team in the league. The only problem that season is that Emeka Okafor only played 26 games, and Gerald Wallace, being Gerald Wallace, if you know how he played during his time, only played 52. Though, during that time in 35 minutes a game, he averaged 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks a game, which is crazy to think of a player. Oh, and that crazy defensive stat line only gave him 9th in the DPOY race. I don't know how, but guess what? Apparently it's only good for 9th. Other notable players to mention is Raymond Felton scoring 11 points a game in his rookie year, which is good, though on 39% from the field. Disgusting. Even though the Bobcats are seeming to be improving, their 28-win record is still good for 3rd pick in the draft, which they used to draft a man named Adam Morrison from Gonzaga, who is apparently compared to Larry Legend himself. No, just fucking no. Why? Why was this even a thing? I'm sure everyone knows of him now, but at the time he was regarded as a very good combo forward prospect with his immense scoring potential while not being the most athletic at the same time, just like Larry Bird. But let's look on what they missed out on. Brandon Roy. Rudy Gay, JJ Redick, even Randy Foye or Rondo would have been some great help. But apparently, Adam was the grand prize of that draft, according to the Bobcats management. Oh, and they also got Ryan Hollins at 50. But if you know how I feel about Ryan Hollins, then you should know why I'll keep my words short about him. After that failure of a draft, they had what they want and thought what was going to be a core of Emeka Okafor, Gerald Wallace, and Adam Morrison. Those three guys together after 2 or 3 years were thought to develop and be a threat in the Eastern Conference. In their first season together, Gerald Wallace ups his scoring numbers to 18 points a game on 50% shooting. Emeka Okafor was able to stay on the court most of the season and averaged 14 points and 11 rebounds with 2 blocks a game, and Adam Morrison, the third pick of that draft, puts up 11 points a game, though on 37% shooting. It just makes a man want to cry. Also, Raymond Felton shoots the ball too fucking much, but that's just Raymond Felton's career. But with that being said, they improved 7 more games on the improvement of Emeka Okafor and Gerald Wallace, while Adam Morrison is still trying to get used to NBA level talent. Will he? We all know he won't. The future is still looking bright in Charlotte though. Even though the future is still looking decent, 33 wins still means a lottery pick. In the 2007 NBA draft, they had the 8th pick and the 22nd pick, which they got in a trade. They had many choices that turned out well in the NBA, like Joakim Noah, Thaddeus Young, Rodney Stuckey, or even Wilson Chandler. But no, they didn't choose any of those players. They chose Brendan Wright, a perennial role player in the NBA, and Elmer fucking J. Fudd himself, Jared Dudley. Yeah, they crashed and burned in this draft. However, the new GM, Rod Higgins, made a nice move in the draft by trading Brendan Wright for a nigga named Jamario Davidson and Jason Richardson. You heard me right, Jason fucking Richardson. With the acquisition of a 26-year-old Jason Richardson, the Bobcats now have a dynamic scorer to help on the perimeter, while Gerald Wallace and Emeka Okafor can focus on defense and scoring when they have to. Even though he was having trouble staying on the court last year and his production took a little bit of a hit, it was still thought that he can bring the scoring needed to help speed up the process of the Bobcats' success. With that being said, the 2007 season was not what they totally expected, since they went from 33 wins to 32, which isn't that bad, but it's still regression. Though the Jason Richardson experiment seemed to be working, since he averaged 22 points a game on decent efficiency while playing all 82 games. Gerald Wallace again brings up his scoring averages while locking up the league. Emeka Okafor was still being a solid big man in the post and playing all of his games. And Raymond Felton is still taking too many shots. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, I didn't say anything about Adam Morrison. Well, mainly because he had a devastating knee injury that took him out for the whole season. So yeah, RIP Adam Morrison's already bad athleticism. Other things to note is that they signed Earl Boykins, the 5'5" god, later in that season, and Jared Dudley didn't really do much his rookie season. But the Bobcats' 32 wins were obviously not good enough for a playoff spot, so it was right back to the drawing board for the next season. The 2008 NBA draft was littered with big man talent. Only problem is that with Emeka Okafor on the team, the Bobcats didn't need to draft another big man, which explains why they drafted DJ Augustine at 9 and Alexis Ajinka at 20. Both not exactly the best picks, but it was understandable why they did it. Though a few picks down was a great post defender named Serge Ibaka, which they definitely missed out on. But now, apparently they had to draft this nigga. But the big move of that summer was the head coaching change, as Larry Brown took over the head coaching position for the Bobcats, which was shown to be very effective, because in the 2008-2009 season, they won 3 more games than they did last time. However, a lot of changes happened within the team to make it happen. Trade number 1. After a 7-15 start to the season, management wanted to change. So on December 10th, the Bobcats traded Jared Dudley and Jason Richardson and a second-round pick to the Suns for a 31-year-old Raja Bell, a young Boris Diaw, and Sean Singletary. Trade number 2. They traded Ryan Hollins and Matt Carroll for the services of Zjanya Diop. Not anything too important, I just wanted to celebrate the fact that they traded away Ryan Hollins. And trade number 3, they traded Shannon Brown and Adam Morrison, who they officially gave up on, as during that season after a knee surgery, he came back and averaged 4 points on 38% from the field for the services of Vladimir Radjanovic from the Lakers. All those trades turned the season around to give them the best record they had in franchise history. It ain't good, but it is something. There isn't much more to mention stats-wise due to the craziness of all the trades, except the fact that Gerald Wallace took a dip in scoring and the Bobcats ranked last in points per game as a team. After another middle-of-the-road season, the Bobcats were still able to keep a lottery pick at 12, which they used to draft Gerald Henderson, who honestly was the best person they could have got for the draft, all things considered, unless they reached and drafted Drew Holiday. But the big move for them that summer was to trade on July 28th of Emeka Okafor for the young, athletic, and defensive force that is Tyson Chandler, who had injury problems last year. He was thought to bring some more effective defense in the paint, but he only lasted 51 games, unfortunately. But let's talk about that season. The Bobcats management continued to make good moves, for example, trading Raja Bell and Vladimir Rajanovic to the Golden State Warriors for Steven Jackson and AC Law, the main prize being Steven Jackson because of his dynamic scoring. Then, to add to the depth, they traded a second-round pick for Theo Ratliff, then traded AC Law, Ronald Murray, and a 2014 first for Tyrus Thomas. Looking back on that, it was definitely an L, but it was good for their time, I guess, and signed an old-ass Larry Hughes near the end of the season. But overall, the Bobcats had the best season up to that point off the scoring of Steven Jackson's 21 points per game and Gerald Wallace's 18 points per game, who even became an all-star because of it. But the most impressive thing about this team was even though, again, they averaged the least amount of points per game, they allowed the least amount of points of opponents' points per game. This suffocating defense all around gave them a 44-38 record, which is good for 7th in the East. Now with this first playoff berth in franchise history, who was their first opponents? Oh, nobody but the Eastern Conference representatives of the finals last year with Defensive Player of the Year Dwight Howard. But this would be the biggest games of the team's existence. They were able to hold Dwight to only 10 points per game. However, they were not able to contain Jameer Nelson, who went off for 24 points a game on almost 50% shooting. And even though they were able to keep the Magic from scoring over 100 points every game, the main struggle for the Bobcats was always efficient scoring. The main scorer, Steven Jackson, did score 18 points per game, however, on 38% shooting, and Gerald Wallace did what he could offensively, but it just wasn't enough. Though, this year did show what the Bobcats could be, a defensive juggernaut, but if they got a few more great offensive pieces, then this team could be something formidable in the East. This year was honestly the start of a major downfall for the Bobcats. First, they traded Tyson Chandler to the Mavericks, who ended up winning the championship that year for some depth that really didn't work out. They signed Kwame Brown, insert random Kwame Brown meme here.
This man was a bona fide scrub. He can't play.
Who wasn't really going to help out with the scoring or defensive effort. In fact, this was one of his last chances in the league, and the only positive thing that ended up happening during that free agency was them signing Sean Livingston as a free agent. But things looked progressively better as the season actually went on. First, after a 9-19 start, Larry Brown was fired and replaced by Paul Silas, who did end up doing a better job later on. They traded the last piece of the original Bobcats team as Rod Higgins wanted to maximize on Gerald Wallace's trade value and traded him to the Trailblazers for Dante Cunningham, Sean Marks, Joel Prisbilla, and 2 future first-round picks. But it seemed that Rod Higgins made a decent move with that trade because after that season, Gerald Wallace started to get worse every year. But the end result of all this was a 34-48 record and the start of another rebuild. And here we go again. Just 2 years ago, this team was the best defensive team in the league, and now they're basically stuck at the bottom. But being at the bottom means another high draft pick. The 2011 NBA draft was full of future talent, so there was no way they can get this wrong. And they didn't, because they picked Kemba Walker, who would end up being one of the better players the franchise will ever know. And with that first rounder from Portland, Charlotte ended up picking Tobias Harris, another nice piece for the future. What? They traded Tobias? They traded Tobias, Steven Jackson, and Sean Livingston? Corey Maggette and Bismack Biyombo. What the fuck? They traded a future great scorer in the league, a developing guard, and I guess a decent scorer in Steven Jackson for a year of bad porn and Bismack? Charlotte, y'all did this to yourselves. What the fuck are y'all doing? Anyways, in the 2011 regular season, we all remember it for being the season. The season where the Charlotte Bobcats obtained the worst win percentage record in NBA history with a record of 7-59. A win percentage of 10.6%. Why? Well, mainly because they had no main scorer, as Kemba Walker, Gerald Henderson, and bad Maggette was all sharing the ball, all at non-efficient rates. Zero depth, and most importantly, there was NBA lockout, so all the players were probably not prepared as they should be. All of those equal up to the worst record in NBA history. The only positive thing that happened was that Corey Maggette ended up getting traded for Ben Gordon in a 2014 first-round pick that ended up becoming Noah Vonleh. And, Ben Gordon didn't really do much there either, so, at least they got rid of Corey. At least they got rid of Corey. Now after that disaster of a season, it can't possibly get worse. You receive the second pick of the 2012 draft, and now what will you do with it? I know that Anthony Davis went first, y'all got screwed over, but hey, there are many of choices. What? You picked Michael Kidd-Gilchrist? You picked the man who was only known to be in the league for having a broken jump shot? His shit is worse than mine. In fact, let me tell you on what you could have picked that was better than him. Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Terrence Ross, Andre Drummond, Harrison Barnes, or even Dion Gummy Waiters. But no, you picked the fucking project. Mother of God. Okay, at least tell me you improved since last season, which is pretty hard not to do. Okay, 21 games is decent, plus y'all have Kemba already showing himself to be a great scorer in the league as he scored 17 points per game, though he needs to work on that efficiency a little bit. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, on the other hand, is doing pretty decent for his first season, and they signed some veteran help like old man Brendan Hayward and Ramon Sessions. Bismack is even showing a little bit of promise too. So again, the Bobcats have something to look forward to in the development of Kemba Walker. All they need to do is draft well in the next few years, right? Okay, Bobcats, y'all have the 4th pick in the 2013 draft. Even though the draft class isn't looking very good, y'all can still pick up some decent role players who can last long in the league. Maybe like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, could be a good 2-guard for Kemba, maybe CJ McCollum, he just needs a few years to develop. Or even the young New Zealander, what's his name, like Steven Adams, he looks good. He looks like he can develop into a nice quality big man. That Giannis kid looks like he can even be an MVP. You never know. So who do you pick, Bobcats?
With the 4th pick in the 2013 NBA draft, the Charlotte Bobcats select Cody Zeller from Indiana University.
Y'all niggas pick Cody Zeller. Well, anyways, after that terrible draft pick, let's see how they do during the offseason. They signed Big Al Jefferson to a 3-year deal and even signed back Joe Henderson for a few years. Looks so y'all are set to see what y'all can do as a team. Y'all even signed a new coach in Steve Clifford, so, maybe the 6th one is a good one for y'all, 6-1 in 10 years, not that bad. So maybe the 6 times the charm. It seemed like Steve Clifford did his thing because the Bobcats had a 22-game turnaround in the 2013-2014 season. The main reasons include Al Jefferson's All-NBA third-team season of 22 points and 11 rebounds a game, and Kemba Walker's 17 points a game, though on 39% for the field, but like we said, he's improving. And lastly, the fact that, again, they allowed the 4th least opponent's points per game. All that together means a 7th seed in the playoffs and getting swept by the champion runner-ups, Miami Heat. And at the end of the season, the Bobcats rebranded back to the Hornets, where to this day they struggled to stay relevant, make more and more bad draft picks, and even lost their franchise player once again. But to recap, the Charlotte Bobcats was always set for failure for the most part. All expansion teams only take off because of draft picks. For example, Shaq and the Orlando Magic. And even though the Bobcats picked Gerald Wallace, they still had to either pick the right pick in the draft again and again and again, which they sucked at doing, or somehow bring an Al Jefferson-like free agent to your team every time, which on its own is near to impossible to do since the team plays in a small market. But all in all, the Bobcats, due to many wrong choices in the draft and the lack of talent on the teams, is why the Charlotte Bobcats was a franchise with 10 years of failure. Nowadays, as the Hornets, they only have young players like Devontae Graham, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, and oh yeah, this nigga. But anyways, that was my look into the Charlotte Bobcats and why things never went well for them. I want to turn this thing into a series, so if you have any more teams, players, or something like that you want me to look into, then comment on what you want to see. Other than that, thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed. Since this video is probably long enough, I'll keep the outro short. Check out my Bobcats Expansion My League series on the 2nd channel. Check out my Twitter, my Instagram, blah, 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 blah. Inside look of Alvini, other sneak peeks of videos, blah, blah, blah. Check out my Twitch where I try to stream terribly. And lastly, don't forget to like the video to help the channel and subscribe if you enjoy what I make. This is your boy, Alvini Linguine. That was a terrible snap. Jesus Christ. Fuck it. This is your boy, Alvini Linguine, saying peace.